We're talking to Dr. Joel Evans, and we've been talking about self-branding, reinventing yourself. Actually, really, we're talking about self-reflection over a lifespan. To be able to really sell yourself, you have to know yourself. And in this section, we're going to talk about translating self-brand into a resume. Now, Dr. Evans, I know we've spoke a little bit about this, and two things that struck me that you said. One is that in many companies, or in many cases, my resume might first go through a computer scanning. And if there are not certain words, my resume may never end up in the hands of a human being. And so I'm thinking, wow, I don't even know what words those are. And so that's one question. And the other is, I know one thing you said, which I want people to hear, and I know you're going to go down another list, but the idea of making many drafts of a resume and being smart enough to send a resume tailored to certain people. But let's start out with, and then I know we're going to talk about articulating the brand on the resume, but how do I deal with that computer scanning? I mean, what should I do about that?
Okay, we do have to face reality. So if it's a larger firm, they could be getting resumes by the thousand, not even the hundreds. Imagine if you're applying for a job at Google, which is rated the #1 employer to work for because of all its benefits and things like that. They're going to get thousands of resumes. So the biggest challenge isn't how you do in the interview; it's how you get to the interview.
Right.
So I think it's important to realize that this is not 1976. This is 2016. We all work with word processing software, and it is not okay to have a resume that's one size fits all. We need to look at the job description, pick out, a half a dozen to a dozen of the buzzwords, work them into our self-brand statement, but also work them into the experience that we've had. So it could be a course title, it could be something we did at work, but if we want to pass by the computer, our resume has got to be geared towards what the job description and what the job qualifications are. That's why I mentioned briefly before, if you're at LinkedIn, to me, they list a ton of jobs, but if you go into the jobs button tab and you type in a type of job that you want, and then just start clicking on them and see what the job descriptions are and the qualifications are, and write down what you think are buzzwords that you could then apply to you. But you must tailor yourself to the individual company. It will not work if you try to send the same resume to 50 places.
So what's an example of a buzzword, for instance, that would apply to you? You're marketing, you're someone who, let's say, have had, you're a marketing graduate. That's what you're coming out. So, for instance, and you're looking at some of the big companies, the social media companies.
I would say capabilities in web design and data analytics.
Okay, and if that's something...
Data analytics is one of the fastest growing fields there are, and by using the word design in there, I'm reflecting the fact that I'm not just surfing on the web, I actually have expertise in it.
So I
would make sure, and those are going to be buzzwords, because they're going to want somebody who's got social media experience. They really do want people who have data analytics experience. That is one of the fastest growing fields. And again, it depends upon the job. Some jobs are more quantitative oriented, so you may want to, mention some of the things that you've done in terms of an analysis. So let's say you've been a student and you've taken some statistics classes. You may want to say, knowledgeable in regression analysis or whatever, if you're applying for a business analyst job. So there's not a person around that can't come up with a bunch of buzzwords.
Well, what I like about what you just...
when I first started looking at people's resumes and cover letter and the LinkedIn page, I really have to have to take a step back so that I don't kill the person who's asked me for advice, because they are usually so far off target in terms of not having a clear statement at the top, including having everything they ever did going back to a cashier in high school, and then compounding it by having as much information about being a cashier as being an intern at a leading advertising agency. So there are a lot of things that should be basic that people just don't do, and there's got to be a recognition now also that employees are looking at two web pages to learn about us. Okay, one is Facebook, and that's for fun. But as part of our self-brand, we have to be careful as we go into the job market in terms of what our cover picture is. And, you shouldn't be using curse words at the site. The companies are looking at them. And then they are also now looking at LinkedIn, because that's a different version of oneself. So there are excellent opportunities to brand ourselves through Facebook and through LinkedIn. So I actually, knowing that you were going to ask me, I came up with because you should be able to define yourself in 25 words or less, and it should be distinctive, not replicate what everybody else is saying.
So let me ask you where I'm going to put this. Wait, one minute. So if I'm going to, let's just so they know. So in other words, I'm going to do a resume. Instead of just using very common words, I'm going to be smart enough not to say things that are not true about me, but I'm going to use the buzzwords. I'm going to learn and translate. I'm not going to just say I'm good with math. I'm going to say I'm good with data analytics, let's say. But now when I actually write the resume, where am I going to put, because I know you spoke about putting your self-brand at the top of the resume. What do you mean?
Same thing, and the same thing at LinkedIn. Okay. So if we start at the top with our name, our phone number, and an email address, we don't need locations anymore. It's irrelevant. But within the email address, please make it professional. Don't write down your birthday or some other cutesy thing. Make it serious. But then right after that, it would be, profile. And this is my 22 words that I have for me. And I'm not looking for a job. I'm happy, but this is my self-brand. And I believe that other people see me in the way that I describe myself. Senior professor at Hofstra Zarb School of Business, longtime consultant, leading textbook author, active blogger and LinkedIn group manager, motivated teacher, frequent speaker. Okay. Nobody has the combination of all of those things together.
Okay, so I'm just going to make it a little bit challenging, and I'm going to say, so I'm a liberal arts major, I'm a good writer, I'm creative, I worked 1 year in my father's plumbing firm, and I now want to work for a marketing company. So and I know you can't just put it together, but what are the kind of things that I'm going to put in that statement that's going to pull them to me before I list my experience? I mean, am I going to...
Okay, so this is an exercise I've done a lot over the years, and I give full credit to David Letterman. And I would ask people to write the top 10 list of how they would like people to see them. 10 different traits or attributes, and try not to just repeat what everybody else says, starting with the one that you would look at as, least important, to the one that you would say absolutely defines you. And that really gets people to think, and most people can't come up with more than about 3.
Okay, so
but it's a good way to get you to introspect. That's why if you look at the job descriptions of that are in the field that you're interested in, you get an idea of what they're looking for, and you could then pull words out from there that you use to describe yourself.
I see. Okay. So I might say...
I would think that once you say, my father's whatever, they're not necessarily listening.
Right. So I would have to say maybe creative, organized, excellent writing skills, social media expertise, um, office management instead of saying my father's plumbing firm, etc. In other words, you're saying by putting down a list of the way you would like to be best described the descriptors and then seeing if you could translate some of those into what the market bears in terms of how those words matter and what they could be translated into.
Right. But again, if we go by the life stage stuff, if we're 22 years old and we're getting a bachelor's degree versus my students who are somewhat older and they're getting an MBA, what you can put on there when you're 22 with the experiences that you've had has to be less than what they're putting.
Sure.
Not in terms of the number of words, but we can't overinflate who we are at 22.
Okay,
what we need to do is show the company the potential that we have. So here's something that I recommend, also all the time, besides this top 10 thing. How can we demonstrate that we are talented beyond just writing the resume? And what I would say to students, both undergraduate and graduate, is can you take your best experience at college, whether it was a course and it was your best paper, or it was an internship that you had, and could you write 150 words on what was learned at that, what experiences were gained in the real world or in this project where you worked on as a team, and have that as a page that accompanies your resume.
Nice.
The resume should never be more than a page, but how about if we can define ourselves in terms of this best thing we've done in our life professionally up until now?
Nice. That's great. So in other words, that's an added glimpse of that you're giving them of yourself.
But it also means that if you have said, as you had in your example, good writer, a great writer or whatever, that gives the person reading this to say if you really are.
Yes, it's wonderful. So in other words, you're really demonstrating the potential in living color.
You're demonstrating your ability to communicate. One of the frustrations is that people can't integrate thoughts. So the fact that you can, write a paragraph or two paragraphs, so you're demonstrating your ability to integrate, you're demonstrating your ability to write, which is a communication skill, and you're demonstrating that you've been out there, doing things that are, more than what a resume can say.
So I have a self-branding, 25-word statement at the top, and then I go into my resume, and then if I'm, as you say, if I don't have a million jobs because I'm only 22, what can I and how can I distinguish myself by something important that I can bring to their attention in a paragraph that gives them a better glimpse of me in living color and my potential? Now,
right, because the typical student, particularly an undergraduate, when you're 22, you've worked at, you probably in high school you had trivial jobs. In college, you had a couple of clerical type of jobs. Maybe if you were lucky, the summer after your junior year, you got a good internship. But there's only so much there. But while we're talking, I make this offer, and I am free for life. I have no agenda. I'm not looking for anything. If anybody wants to email me at Joel, Joel, Prof, Prof, @hotmail.com, and has a self-branding statement or a resume or something that they'd like to have me look at, it would be my pleasure.
And he's absolutely wonderful at this. Let me ask you
and again, free.
Yes. There's your brand. Let me ask you to share the things not to do in terms of jobs. What's some of the things on your list in terms of what if I haven't gotten a job 1 year after another and I'm going for a job? How do I set that up on my resume? What if I didn't have a good GPA? What am I going to do then?
There are a couple of questions in there. I'll start with the last one. If you don't have it, grad schools are really interested in GPA. Companies, not so much. If you have a really low GPA, they're not happy. But they may not want somebody who's got a 4.0. because they feel that person might be a perfectionist or take too much time doing projects. It's a really interesting kind of thing. It's like people when they go to Amazon and decide whether they're going to pick out a product. Studies have shown they like a 4.7 or a 4.8. They don't like a 5.0 because they feel that somehow there's cheating that's going on.
That's
that
great.
They must, the company must have a ton of people that just, say they love them. So I think that what it comes down to is that your GPA doesn't define you either. It's the totality of you. So this is why creating the self-brand. And I had a post on my evansonmarketing.com. That's one word, evansonmarketing.com. I had a post this past week about, learning from failure and how many people have failed, including Einstein, Walt Disney, Michael Jordan, and being as assertive as you could be and defining yourself as positively as you can. When I actually wrote about myself in there, and I said when I was 19, I didn't do great on an exam, and I went in to talk to the professor, not to complain, but just to say, what could I do better for the final? And he said, basically, I don't know why you're here. I'm sure that you're a first-generation college student, and your parents are blue-collar workers, so this is what best you're going to do.
Oh, my goodness.
So that has annoyed me for a decade.
For a lifetime.
And helped me establish a self-brand that is nothing like that. And in fact, propelled me to know that I've done better than he did.
That's great.
So you have to define yourself. That guy was defining me without having a clue about me. And unfortunately, what happens in the if you get the interview, is that the interview is relatively short, and the interviewer may be seeing 10 or 15 people in a day. So it is really hard to stand out. So that's why we've got to be creative in defining our self-brand. See, if we can demonstrate to the person interviewing us that we have a sense of direction, that we know what our strengths are, we're ahead of 95% of people. Why do you want to come to work for this company? Why did you decide you wanted to go into accounting or to finance? Believe it or not, there are a lot of people that can't answer that.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, we're going to take a break. It's invaluable information. On the other side of this break, we're going to talk about a little bit more about resumes and then rebranding and what do you do if you're not 20, but you're 65 and you're thinking about retirement. Stay with us. We'll be right back.